I told you in the last time we spoke that the night before the invasion of Iraq, I was the note taker in a meeting. It was a principals committee meeting. So it was supposed to be chaired by the president, but it wasn't. It was chaired by the vice president. And they're all in a bank of monitors. So it's the vice president, Condoleezza Rice, the national security advisor, Colin Powell, General Tommy Franks from CENTCOM, a bunch of guys from the National Security Council, and George Tenet. So I'm sitting directly behind George and I'm taking notes. And Cheney starts the meeting by saying, General Franks, why don't you start by giving us the order of battle? I've said before, I hate order of battle briefings. I hate them. They mean nothing to me. And he says, well, elements of the 1st Cavalry are moving here, and we're 10 clicks from this village, and the 2nd Mountain Brigade is... I don't care where these guys are. Just go fight your war the way you want to fight it, and we don't need to know where each guy is moving on the map. So then Cheney says, so everything's in place for tomorrow. And Frank says, if everything goes as planned, we can be in Tehran by August. And then George discreetly turns off his microphone and he goes, did he say Tehran or did he say Baghdad? And I said, he said Tehran. And George goes, have these people lost their minds? And then he turns the microphone back on and just sits there. So we go through the rest of the briefing, and one of these idiots from the National Security Council, I never liked this guy. He used to say something. He used to call Kurdistan Kurdland, which was offensive. And then I saw an unnamed White House official said, Kurdland, blah, blah, blah. And I said, he's the source for the Washington Post because he's the only person in town who says Kurdland.
You just outed yourself.
Yeah. So anyway, he says, the moment we cross that border tomorrow, they're going to throw flowers at us. So the meeting ended, and I went back to the deputy director's office, and he said, how was the meeting? And I said, did you know we were going to invade Iran? And he said, are they still talking about that? We're not going to invade Iran. I said, so-and-so said they're going to throw flowers at us when we cross the border tomorrow. I said, do these guys know nothing about history? And he said, no, they know nothing about history, and they know nothing about the Middle East.
And how do we get better intel? I mean, even today we're looking at similar circumstances in the Middle East.
Nothing changes.
Where we just assume this is what we think is a great idea. Therefore, everyone else thinks it's a great idea.
The Iranian regime is a house of cards. And as soon as we drop these bunker busters, people are going to take to the streets and overthrow the Ayatollahs. No, they're not. I'll tell you, my girlfriend is Iranian, and she goes to Iran 2 or 3 times a year. And she sends me, every night, she'll send me videos. People are out at 1:00 in the morning at the cafe, and there's music, and people are laughing and enjoying each other's company. That government's not going anywhere. Their economy lacks for nothing because they have such great trade relations with Russia, China, and India. We have crippling sanctions on them. Well, guess what? They can get everything they need from the other guys. Mm-hmm. And so the notion that this country is just going to fall apart as soon as we launch an airstrike, that's fantasy land. It's not going to happen. I told my parents when I was 9, I wanted to be a spy.
Yeah.
And I told them when I was 16, I wanted to be a spy in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, part of that is lunacy, but
yeah. So my dad is like, can't you be a dentist?
So appreciable. I love it. I have something interesting I'd like to do, and we'll see how this turns out, because who knows? I may have some names on here that turn into something else, a complete left turn. But I put together, I have a handful of questions that were left over from the last time that are kind of random. So I don't want to go into too many left turns, but this might cause some left turns anyway. But I have a word association that I'd like to play, and I have some names. And if you have a word or a phrase to describe the first thing that comes to mind, or something interesting you want to elaborate on, but I'll start with just these are super random and in no order, probably on purpose, but Dick Cheney. First thing that comes
dangerous.
dangerous short explanation.
Dick Cheney pushed the bounds of the Constitution more than any other vice president in American history. And we've learned now, a generation after he left office, that he really was the president. He had primacy over foreign affairs, intelligence, defense, energy, everything that mattered. George W. Bush, who by all accounts was a perfectly lovely man, just simply was not in charge of the country. Dick Cheney was.
And is that due to his personality? Because
Yes.
I know George's personality was passive and cool and everything's okay.
The movie Vice has kind of a funny scene where Bush is trying to convince Cheney to run for vice president. And Cheney says, no, I don't want to do it. No, I'm not interested. No. Okay, well, I would have to be in charge of foreign policy. Bush says, done. Defense policy. Okay. Intelligence. All right. Energy. Yes. Trade. Okay. Okay, then I'll do it. And then he does it. And Bush just turns it all over.
Remarkable position to be everyone looking this way while this is happening over here. It's kind of a whole vice president thing. All right. How about Bill Clinton?
Disinterested. Bill Clinton famously was briefed by the CIA twice in his 8 years as president. He had no interest whatsoever in intelligence. Al Gore had a great interest, and Gore was briefed 6 days a week for 8 years. And if there was something important that Clinton needed to know, Gore would brief him. But Jim Woolsey, who was Clinton's first CIA director, said that he had never briefed Clinton, and he wasn't sure Clinton would recognize him in a meeting. Mm-hmm.
He trusted Gore that much.
He did. And Gore really was on top of things.
This is going to be a weird one. And tell me if you know anything about this, because I don't remember exactly when your CIA stint started. But Kiki Camarena.
Oh, well, he's kind of a famous, DEA agent who was killed. In fact, I think he was the first one that was killed in Mexico by one of the cartels. And it was the death of Kiki Camarena that led the Reagan administration to pursue legislation that would allow U.S. law enforcement to kidnap people overseas and clandestinely bring them back to face trial. She said, I didn't whistle at the whale. Somebody else did.
Right.
Well, they couldn't figure out. It was unclear on the video. They arrest her. She fought this thing for 5 years. In the end, they bump it down to a misdemeanor. She does a year of probation. She pays a fine, but she was fired from her job. She lost her pension. She lost her boat. She lost her condo. Her business relationship broke up. She had to start back at square one. So I ask, is society safer because they went after her?
Yeah.
Are you and I better off in society because they protected us from this woman who may or may not have whistled at a whale? But this is what we're up against.
Yeah.
This isn't illegal in any other country in the world.
It's
Why would it be
remarkable.
illegal here?
It's difficult sometimes to get a legitimate case called in that the FBI will adopt.
May I give you an example there?
Please.
May of 2020. COVID has just started. I get a job offer to be the chief operating officer of an Athens, Greece based investment company. It's a job from heaven, right? I negotiate a package. I take the job. I start flying back and forth every 2 weeks. Washington, Athens, Washington, Athens. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I'm there about 6 weeks. And I call my lawyer, who's one of my best friends. He's the former deputy attorney general under President Reagan. And he said, hey, how's it going out there? I said, Bruce, you're not going to believe this whole thing is just an elaborate bank fraud. He said, I got to resign, but I'm not sure what to do. He said, download every document you can download onto a thumb drive and quit. So I download 15, 20,000 pages of documents, prove large scale bank fraud. I quit. I come back to DC. So I call the FBI. I just can't get through. there's an FBI agent in my neighborhood. I said, what do I do with this? And he said, you got to call 311. I said, that's what you call to fill potholes. He said, I know, but we got the system now. You call 311. They say, oh, refer it to the police. The police are going to realize that it's federal. Then they bump it up to us. And then if we're interested, I said, forget that. I'm not going to waste my time doing that. So I call my lawyer again. And I said, you remember this guy, Ben? He used to be the deputy director of the FBI. He said, yeah. I said, I used to be in touch with him regularly. Are you still in touch with him? He said, sure, I'll call him. He calls Ben. Ben says, I'll get you into the FBI. So he makes us an appointment at the Washington field office. I take my thumb drive. My lawyer and I go to the Washington field office. We sit down with this agent and I said, I have documentary proof of a large scale international bank fraud scheme. And the guy puts up his hands and he goes, guys, if this doesn't have the words terrorism, China, or January 6th, we're not interested.